theme has one widget area, which is the sidebar. Themes usually have widget areas in the footer as well, but our theme is pretty simple, so we won't bother creating a widget area for the footer. However, if you feel like creating one for the footer anyway, then the process is basically the same. Alright, so right now I'm looking at a function called register_sidebar. As usual, check out the resources section of this lecture for the link. If you look at the very short description, WordPress recommends that we use this function in the widgets_init action hook. So let's do that. In our functions file, let's add this hook under the hooks section and let's call our function ju_widgets. Next, let's create a file in the includes folder called widgets.php and include it from our functions file. Lastly, let's define the function. Now, we can create widget areas for our theme. Let's take a look at the WordPress documentation for the register_sidebar function. There's only one parameter and it's optional. It takes in an array. Let's go by this one by one in our functions file. So let's call this function and pass it an array. The first parameter is the name of the sidebar. The name should be readable, short, and concise. I'll be using the __ function like last time since I want to allow users to translate this name if needed. I'm going to simply call it my first theme sidebar. The second key we can set is the ID. We must set an ID or WordPress will throw an error. Before we set the ID, let's go to the codex for a second. Scroll down to the notes and I want you to look at the very first note. WordPress warns us of IDs we should avoid and provides a link of IDs not to use. So let's take a quick look, and as you can see, the list is pretty exhaustive. Let's go back to our widget file and let's give our widget a unique ID. One way of making sure we have a unique ID is to prefix our ID with initials like we do with our functions. I'm going to give my sidebar the ID ju_sidebar. Next is a simple description. I'm going to make this translatable and set it to sidebar for the theme udemy. I'm going to leave the class empty as I don't want to apply any classes. There are a couple more things we should be doing, but I just want to make sure our widgets are working. So let's refresh our page and we should get no errors. Let's go to our WordPress dashboard and you should see a new menu item appear under Appearance called Widgets. Let's check it out quickly. As you can see, WordPress now has created a nice little UI for our sidebar. It takes care of saving and updating our sidebar. Right now our sidebar is empty, so let's drag and drop some widgets onto our sidebar. After doing so, let's take a look at our site. You'll notice that our widgets aren't loading. This is because we haven't called the function for displaying them. Before we do that, let's separate our sidebar from our template. Just like the header and the footer, sidebars can be put in their own files and be called with the function get_sidebar. The rules for names apply to this function as well. So let's create a file called sidebar.php. Next, let's completely remove all HTML between the aside tags in our template. Then, let's call the get_sidebar function. Open up the sidebar file, and before we can display it, we have to check if it's active. Inside an if statement, let's call the isActiveSidebar function. This function does exactly what we need it to do. Check if our sidebar is active. You simply pass in the name of the sidebar. In our case, this would be the ID of the sidebar we created, which is ju_sidebar. Inside this conditional statement, if it returns true, we'll call a function called dynamic_sidebar, which will take care of displaying our sidebar. The only thing we have to pass it is the ID of our sidebar, which is ju_sidebar. If we did everything right, we should now see our new sidebar appear on our page. Great. Well, not so much, because the HTML output doesn't really go well with our theme. Let's fix this in the next lecture.